So today I want to talk about limits of federal government power. What are those limits? Are there limits? I think it depends on who you ask. So when you break this down and you look at society today and how our federal government operates, you can derive from the various entities what they think that their limits are, right? When you look at things that have happened in Congress, in the Supreme Court, in the executive branch, you get a pretty clear idea of what these individual entities think are their limits. And as such, in the reactions by the public to those things, what the public perceives those limits to be. So what does the Constitution say? Because that's the defining document of what our federal government's powers are and are not. In Article 1, Section 8, we have the enumerated powers of Congress. This applies specifically to the legislative branch. And in that, it talks about things like the ability to wage war, the ability to negotiate treaties with third parties, various things such as that. It also includes a couple of clauses in that, and those clauses include promoting general welfare, commerce, the ability to govern commerce between the states, and being able to apply things that are necessary and proper to those ends, to the enumerated powers. The problem is those few clauses right there are open doors. So even though they've listed out all these things, these are the things that are enumerated for Congress to do, there's these clauses that say that they have to promote the general welfare. Well, what does that really mean? That's a pretty nebulous thing to talk about. So a lot of what Congress does, they simply just point to the general welfare clause or point to commerce or point to the necessary and proper clause to justify their reasons for passing a certain law. And this has been borne out in the courts as standing up. In 2010, there was a famous case in the Supreme Court, the Comstock case, where there was a challenge to the federal government over their ability to change the status of someone who was already incarcerated for a different crime, saying that they were a sex offender. And this was immediately challenged and said the law that the federal government was using, the Attorney General was using to apply this status to this prisoner was overstepping the reach of what Congress should have the power to do. Well, the Supreme Court upheld or overturned this and said that because of the necessary and proper clause, this was totally allowed. So you see there's examples of this expansion of the idea of where these limits of power are within our Congress, despite not having specific enumerations in Article 1, Section 8. Congress now, without an amendment to the Constitution, has the ability to perform these powers. So you have that, and that's essentially the way that our Congress looks at themselves. There was a congressman just a few years ago, when he was asked, well, what are the limits of Congress? He said, well, there's not any. And he was probably honestly speaking truthfully that he didn't believe that there was any limits to his own powers. If he could think of a reason to come up with a law, there was nothing stopping him from passing it, and there was nothing stopping the president from signing it, and nothing stopping it from being enforced. So that's kind of a general look at the way the Congress looks at it. The Supreme Court's really kind of no different. And not just the Supreme Court, but the general court system seems to think that they don't have any limits to how they can interpret laws. That's their role. They're supposed to be there to interpret laws according to the Constitution. In 2009, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, one of the Supreme Court justices, wrote a decision on a case And she cited not the U.S. Constitution, but cited European law. And she argues that, why shouldn't we have the ability to look to outside law, European law or foreign law, and is what she, the terms that she actually used, to manage cases here and weigh against cases here in the United States, which is a clear, separation of what the intent of the Constitution is, but nobody questions it. And then you have the executive branch. In the executive branch, even today we have nearly 40 czars of various capacities, that all have various amounts of power. And there's nothing checking these czars from being able to do their duties or perform their tasks and duties and have the responsibilities that they have. So every single branch of the government has seen some sort of expansion of its powers over the years. And the result is that we've got a much broader interpretation of where the powers of government lie, but you don't have any pushback from the people. So the final point in all of this is, if all these entities are able to do this and the people don't question it, then does it really matter what the Constitution says? And that's it.